I'm Josh Mason. I'll introduce myself a little more in a second, but who here has ever messed up? You messed up something? We've all messed up, right? Well, here's this guy. Jacob Zanten, and I'm not going to try to butcher his Dutch name. He was the KLM director of training back in the 90s, hotshot, one of the best pilots in the world. He was even in the KLM in-flight magazine featured. So when people got off the plane, were like, "Oh my gosh, you were in the magazine. I was on your plane." He was that kind of hotshot. Well, he was also the pilot in command of the most deadly crash in history. And I'll say this again later. It's not his fault. This crash has been looked at by so many people. And there were so many pieces and parts that have been worked on and tuned, from air traffic control to pilot training to a lot of things. But basically, he took off his 747 while there was still a plane on the runway. They crashed and nearly everyone died. Some people got out, thank God. I'm sorry, it gets a little dark. I used to be a flight safety officer in the Air Force. I flew C-130s. I've flown in Africa and Europe, Central America, and all over Afghanistan. And as a lieutenant, I went to aircraft mishap investigation school and learned how to do an investigation similar to who's done digital forensics investigations. It is not any different, except you're walking through fields looking for body parts and pieces of planes. And it's kind of dark, but the joy of it is you don't have to do it that often, thank God. The reason we have aircraft mishap investigation school, the reason we have flight safety officers in the Air Force, the reason we haven't had any airline casualties with more than 50 people in the past 10 years are the same reasons I'm going to talk about today. And like, who here has dealt with an incident in the past 2 months in your job? A lot of us. That used to be what flying was like in the 60s and 70s, even the 80s and 90s, truth be told. There's things that we can start doing, that we can influence, that are going to make the world better, that are going to make our jobs hopefully go away. But let's start small. So why am I here today? Why am I doing this talk? Why did they allow me to speak to you all? I want you to be the best at your job that you can possibly be. Now, you might be really freaking hot. You might be amazing. You might be presenting, running workshops, training here. You might be, speaking every single day on a live stream for an hour and filming videos. But there's all things that we can do to improve. How do we do that? So this might feel a little more like a TED Talk than a cybersecurity talk, but I'm going to try to combine them. What if you're not a hacker? Anyone not consider themselves a hacker? That's fine. We love you. This still applies. The things that we're talking about here, I'm going to try to analogize since I know you're in the audience. I've done sales, I've done marketing. I swear I do more sales and marketing right now than I do actual cybersecurity. But this applies everywhere. Hey, Dave. Anyone know the Swiss cheese model? If I say Swiss cheese model, like some people are like, yeah, I know what that means. All right. For those who don't, there's this model where we set things up, or there are events that act as Swiss cheese. An incident occurs, an aircraft mishap, a breach, when the things that we have in place have these holes and they align just perfectly to where you've got a loss. And I've taught this in Security Plus, and I used to teach this to tons of pilots in rooms bigger than this. There's things that line up. What do? We try to make the hole smaller, add slices of cheese, try to figure out, okay, if it's component failure, let's work on that component. But also, there's an interface confusion. Okay, so let's work on that as well. And then there's human error. Okay, how do we solve that? Through some training, remedial stuff, maybe putting some processes in place. The key to improving everything, to avoid incidents, to avoid mishaps, is to work on all of them. Because if you can get one fixed, you reduce incidents. How? How do you do that? We'll get there. Who knows the cyber kill chain? So there's also a mishap kill chain. These things are everywhere. They're the same. People like me have come before and been like, I'm stealing that and using it here. There are things that line up that if we break the chain, you don't have a breach, right? That's how it's supposed to work. Similarly, with a mishap, there's a chain of events that lines up. If you can break that chain, theoretically, you might not have had an incident. Plane was saved, nothing was broken, everyone got home on time. Those don't just fix themselves. None of this just fixes itself, right? Like, you've responded to tons of incidents. Sorry, just pointing in here. We've talked about this. You know what to identify, and then you work with your customers to remediate these things so that they don't happen again. You are fixing the holes in the Swiss cheese. What about our companies? What about what we do on a daily basis? Anyone late to meetings? Sometimes I'm late. Something runs over. Anyone get a report in late anytime lately? Anyone forget to get their time card in on time? Your HR person is like, hey, Josh, time cards. They were due an hour ago. Right. That's not like a big incident, but you know what? That is something, there's a chain of events that led to that if I fixed one of those, my time card would be on time. There's improvement that can happen everywhere if we apply these ideas to anything that we could consider an incident in our life. There we go. Tie back to marketing and sales. Your webinar sucks. The live stream doesn't work well. Your ad campaign doesn't reach anyone. You can't get anything from a marketing qualified lead to a sales qualified lead. There's something in your chain that needs to be worked on. So, like I said, I don't want to blame Jacob for the incidents. He was part of a thing, a whole system that needed a lot of fixing. Anyone think IT and cybersecurity is perfect right now? All right, only question with no hands. We learned from this. I know you all are learning from the incidents that come out. Maybe you watch Jerry's daily cyber threat brief and you take those lessons back. Gotta help my bud. Maybe you take those lessons back and you improve what you're doing or help your customers. Let's think bigger. Let's see if we can apply this everywhere. So I used to fly planes, flew C-130s, and then I became a cyber warfare officer in the Air Force. Ran a 7,000 endpoint base down in Florida. I reported to the squadron commander. He was basically the CIO and CSO for the whole base. And from there, got into teaching. Taught at the Air Force Special Operations School, the Defense Cybercrime Center's Cyber Training Academy. I made the latest version of EJPT with Hackersploit. And I've worked with amazing hackers at Neuvik. I've seen through all this that there's things overall that we can improve in our community. So let's dive into how we do that. When I was a pilot, I had one of these. Anyone know what this is? Yell it out. Checklist? Who has a checklist for everything you do every single day? Who has a checklist for how you run an incident? Who has a checklist for how you run a pen test? There wasn't anything we did with a plane in preparation, in scheduling, in getting orders signed. After we landed, the maintenance. Where's my maintainers? Alex in here? Leslie? There's nothing you do without a checklist in the Air Force. Why? Because of that. Who's knocked over a machine? Any pen testers knock over a machine? Anyone waste a time on an incident trying to find something because followed a rabbit hole? It's okay. We've all done it. And I know you just told me you don't have a checklist. This seems obvious. And I know what you're going to say. It changes. The environment changes. Does it? You got to enumerate. You got to identify. You got to exploit. You got to expand. The same things are going to happen on every pen test, right? You're going to run the same scans. You're going to start in the same place. Depending on what you find, you're going to change, but you got something to work from, right? Next time you're working, write down what you're doing. There's a sacred ritual with pilots, the debrief. You could walk to a plane. It's broken. You sit there all day waiting for maintenance to fix it or say, we can't fix it today, you're canceled. I've sat for 6 hours in a cockpit waiting, like, are we going to go? And when we got done with that flight, we went back in and we debriefed. We didn't even start the engines. We debriefed. Every single flight. We sat down. We said, what worked? What didn't work? How can we improve? And guess what? This is a debrief checklist, a checklist about all of that. Specific things to talk about. Why? Because planes crash and people die. How do you stop that? Checklists, debriefs. Does it always work? No. F-35s do weird shit and you got to get out. And then you get back and you debrief. But it helps more often than not. Who has policies that drive exactly what you're going to do when you respond to an alert for a customer, or exactly what you're going to do when you start a pen test? If we run into these things, you identify these services. What are we going to do? We had a really amazing junior pen tester, and when we started a pen test as an engagement manager, I went, so Joe, what are we doing? What comes next? He went, I'm not sure. I was like, I know you know what you're doing. You know what comes next. You've passed the OSCP. I know you know exactly all the steps. So tell me what comes next. He wasn't sure. He didn't feel strong about it. And that's not a problem. He's a great guy. If you're here, Joe, love you. Amazing pen tester. Wicked smart. There weren't exact policies that he was trained that this is exactly what we do. When you fly, there's no shit policies. Oh, this is what we do. We're going to follow these rules. If you get told this, you do that. If air traffic control says you do this, you do it. Why? Because regulations and policies are written in blood. And this is what you get when you ask AI to do pilots regulations written in blood. Yeah. It's not a picture of me, probably AI. Coming from the Air Force, I had the bonus of a long history of wanting to do things better, wanting to not lose planes for stupid reasons, not kill people for stupid reasons. There's all sorts of dumb shit that happened in aviation for a long time. We sent people to Vietnam who, great, you can fly the plane, excellent, let's go to Vietnam. And they sucked. They were really bad at air-to-air combat. They would get shot down all the time. We had a 2-to-1 kill to loss ratio. Like, you're thinking that's not bad. No, that means like almost every flight we lost pilots and planes. That's really bad. It's like really bad. Imagine you're a cop, there's two of you in a car, and every time you go and there's gunfire, one of you dies. It's like that. Like, that is not acceptable. So what did the Air Force do? They were like, we need to put these people through combat before they go to combat. And so Red Flag was made, Nellis Air Force Base near Las Vegas. The Air Force, the whole military actually, goes to war somewhere around 10 times a year over Nevada, Eastern California, Utah during Red Flag. There's like hundreds of airplanes, tons of fighter pilots doing this sort of stuff against each other because it makes them good at what they do. You're here. You're doing the right stuff. This is the closest I think in cyber that we get. You come to these talks, you learn stuff, you do CTFs. But in the Air Force, we had Red Flag. They realized they needed to be better as a whole organization. And we were losing planes. Still, like, okay, we solved the getting shot down, doing our jobs thing with Red Flag. What about the Bob crashed a plane for a stupid reason? There's a case study of a B-52 pilot. And I've heard this story so many times. I learned it in basic training. And anyone who's been in the Air Force, be like, oh yeah, I know that story. Lieutenant Colonel, like 18 years in the Air Force, hotshot B-52 pilot. They're flying at like 500 feet off the ground, 250 knots with like nukes in them. And this guy's on the demo team. Go to air shows, do cool stuff in a plane that's got 8 engines, looks like it should not be doing cool stuff. Except he'd do dumb stuff too. And everyone knew he was doing dumb stuff. And they let him get away with it for a long time. And the squadron commander was like, you know what? You're not safe. You can't fly with anyone but me. He didn't ground him. He didn't like say stop. Well, he did say stop, but like he literally, as the squadron commander, could have been like, you're not flying anymore. That's what I can do as a commander. No, he flew with him. And they had an air show. They both died. 8 other people on the plane and put a bunch of civilians who were at the air show in danger because he got too slow, banked it up too high. And there's, if you look for B-52 air show crash on YouTube, you'll watch the same video I've seen dozens of times of them just falling to the ground, splitting a giant fireball. So we have studied that. We have the Air Force Safety Center. We have flight safety officers who get up and speak to other pilots like this, where hackers are speaking to hackers. Pilots are speaking to pilots of, hey, we can't do stupid shit. You got to follow the regulations and tell the stories of these hard things that happen. There is a whole system, a whole school just for safety. And then we've got weapons officers. Some people might not like this. Some people might be like, oh yeah, of course. But weapons officers are like SANS instructors. Literally, you have to be an instructor pilot. You have to be a great instructor pilot. You have to be chosen by your commander to go to weapons school and figure out what is the best way to employ the C-130. How do we become more lethal, more helpful? How can you fly next to helicopters? How can you get into places that we haven't been able to get into before? How can we make airdrops more effective? How can we make them cheaper? Those are the things that weapons officers figure out. And they're instructors. So they go to school, they work on all this stuff, they think high level, and then they come back and they tell everyone at their unit how to become wicked badass pilots. There's a whole school and a whole system for this. Why? Why does the Air Force do all that stuff? They've got core values. My other Air Force people, core values: integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we do. Excellence in all we do. It is a core value of the organization. We want to be the best at everything. So much so that we will think about it and spend money and create schools so that people can be the best that they can be. Who here had to pay for themselves to come to Deadwood because your company doesn't have funds for training and travel to conferences? This, schools and things in place to make you better, having an ethos of excellence. Now, your core values, your personal, your teams, your companies, they don't need to be the same as the Air Force. Do you have any? Do you know what the core values of your company are? Do you know the core values? I know you do. John's awesome. Do you know the core values of your company? Can you recite them? Do the core values of your company, of your organization, of your team, are you living them? Do you put them in place? A growth mindset. You're all here, so I assume you believe you can get better at what you do, right? Show of hands, who believes that you can get better at what you do? All right. If you're not sold yet, if you're like, no, I have natural skill, this is how I've always been, I'm the greatest, and this is me, that's cool. We'll talk later. We've all gotten where we are by training and practicing and putting in the work to get where we are. And we're going to get to where we want to be by training and putting in the work and getting to where we want to be. We can all improve if we want to. We have the ability. But the mindset of that, are you thinking that every day? In the Air Force, it's a given. You show up to basic training, you suck at something, they say don't suck. They say get better at that. Like you're like, well, I can't run fast. Work on it. I can't carry a pack. Work on it. I suck at flying. Well, study. Here's the things to do. Here, I will give you the things to do to become better at this. But you can do it only if you put in the time, the effort, and you have the mindset to know that you can get better at it. Quibbling. One of the things that makes the Air Force feedback mechanism work is trying to get rid of quibbling. And it's a natural human thing. Defensive reactions. Well, that's the organization. Well, it wasn't perfect. Well, stop saying well. Quibbling. Shut up. I told you a thing. Take that thing, apply it. You don't have to be right. I'm not right. I noticed a thing. You typed the command wrong. Deal with it. It happens. It's fine. It's not a problem. Just shut up being offensive about it and do it better next time. Don't quibble. I remember an incident. My friend Caroline, I love her to death, good friend, but man, pilot training, she'd come back in, the instructor would be like, why were you doing that? Why do you keep doing that? Like, this is what the procedure says. And she'd go, well, and finally the instructor stood up, was like, Caroline, stop it. Lieutenant, sit down and shut up. I'm an instructor. I need you to listen. I am not spending my time here instructing for you to be defensive. I want you to be better. You can be better. Identify that this is what the problem is and fix it. Don't tell me why you were right. I don't care. I am telling you because I want you to be better. I have this slide because we all quibble. It is a natural human thing. I've talked to operational psychologists. The Air Force has them embedded now in different units to help us be better, because that's excellence in all we do. Quibbling, being defensive is natural. It's fine. Again, here's something that we can work on. If you don't quibble, if you don't complain, you're amazing. And I need to learn meditation and like all that from you. But one of the things that gets us from becoming great, becoming amazing, is our defensiveness and quibbling. If you get feedback, take it. Someone has decided that you are worth the time for me to explain this to you. They could just be like, I don't care. Like, he's not going to get it. Why would I spend the time explaining this to him? No, if you're getting feedback, that means they care. So appreciate that. Take that to heart. You care about me being better? Excellent. I'm going to like clear my mind, listen to what you're saying, and afterwards maybe ask questions or make sure that I know how to do what it is you're telling me about. And it's not just for managers. All of this. There's a lot of cultural, organizational, like procedural stuff. If you don't have a checklist, make a checklist. It doesn't have to be for everyone. Make it for you. Make your job easier. One of the lessons I had in EJPT early on is take notes as you're going through this course for the commands you're using. When you see a thing, what are you going to do with it? You're going to see the same stuff over and over again. Create your checklist now. Because then when you come down the line, Control F, I've seen this before. I do this, and this. And if you're a hotshot, you've already got that, and you're like, well, I know all this stuff. Awesome. Make a checklist and give it to the people who don't. Make a talk about it. Get up here. You're a weapons officer equivalent, like, then be an instructor. If you're the best at what you do in this room, then why don't you have a green one of these? Sorry, not to shame or to blame, but I'm open to motivate. If you know cool shit, help other people be excellent. I don't know that much. I just like talking to people. That's why I'm here. Help other people be excellent. So implementation's hard. And sorry, I'm going to go back to this. So you could be an individual. What are your values? If you know your company has values, but you don't identify the company values day to day, that's okay. If you're an individual contributor, you could assuage as much as you want. Have your own values. Decide what it is that you're about. If you're about excellence, it doesn't matter if the company's not. Now, conflicting stuff, if they're about making money and you're about excellence, maybe I'll help you find a new job. I know some people, we'll work on it. But if you like where you're at, and it's just the organization isn't putting that there, you can do it with what you're doing. You can do it with the people around you. My wife was also a C-130 pilot, and we were talking about things this summer while we were driving. And she's told me the story before, but on a trip to Colorado, it's a training trip. She's with our favorite instructor pilot, and then a lieutenant who's a couple years younger than us. And at the end of a flight, he turns to her and he's like, man, after the debrief, why does he hate me? And she's like, do you really want to know? I'm like, yeah. It's because when they tell you to do stuff, you just go, and then you don't change. Like if you're too wide or too high on a like approach, on a turn, on a landing, if you're too fast, if your aim point's too long and they say something, you don't change it. Like you're hearing all this stuff and you're not doing anything. You say, yeah. It's like, well, yeah, but I know how to do it. It's like, then fucking say, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to slow down. I'm going to reduce power. I'm going to make my turn tighter, earlier, whatever it is to fix the problem. Say it. That was my wife's feedback to the guy. He's a weapons officer now. He's one of the best weapons officers in C-130s because he was a good pilot, just kind of a lieutenant. If you're in the military, you know what that means. If you've been around the military, you probably know what that means. You got to figure out that you got to listen, not be defensive, and put into practice the stuff that the awesome instructors, people with more experience, people who've seen it, are giving you. And the people around you. If you're an individual contributor, I assume you're on a team, right? Is everyone as good as you? Is anyone better than you? Are there people you can learn from? Are there people you can help? Are there things that you can put in place? Maybe you're not the team lead, but maybe you are like the unofficial team lead. Be like, hey, guys, I'm the lead for this engagement. I'm not our manager, but why don't we do this? Why don't we run this checklist? Like, here, let's put these procedures in place. How about for this engagement, while I'm the lead, we do this every day. Like, we'll check in here, check out there. We'll have this process for ticketing. Let's we've got Teams. Let's use Teams ticketing. We've all got Outlook. Let's take all the steps that we need. Let's make them to-dos. I'm going to assign them out to you in Outlook because we got it. Why not use it? Anyone ever done that? Why not? You just like remaking the wheel every time? It's there. You're paying for it. It's free. All you got to do is sit down, the thing you're already going to do, write it out, assign it to a person. There's this whole new thing from Microsoft where you can make man, what's that called now? It's like a Jira. You can make a to-do list, assign the stuff. It will then make your to-do items and notify you because you can put a due date. Hey, today you're going to enumerate, and you're going to run Nmap, you're going to run Nessus, you're going to run manual scans, and you're going to run burp. There, they're assigned. Why don't I just put them here in the sheet? It'll make the to-dos. And then at the end of the day, hey, did you guys do all those things? Oh, this is what happened. Stuff came up. Excellent. Let's write that down. Let's make new to-dos for tomorrow. Like when you're clearing out alerts, am I going to give feedback to other customers to help them fix this thing? If I give them, sorry, using the example, if I give them all of these alerts to fix, they're going to say, I don't have time for that. But if I give them a specific type of alert, they do fix it. Okay, I know I'm going to do this. Put you on the spot. Have you made other people do that? Have you told any other analysts? And it didn't come to me yesterday, sorry. But those are the things that we could start doing as individual contributors. Figure out how to be better at what you're doing and help the people around you be better. And like Leslie said yesterday, if it's toxic, let's find you a new place. Companies that are toxic don't need to be wasting all of our energy. Let's let them die. Sorry. We all leave. They'll figure it out. I'm kind of mean. Thanks. Actually, talk about that. If you do a debrief, do a debrief. You're going to do it anyways. You're going to sit around bullshit about what happened last week. You're going to sit around bullshit about the engagement, about the customer. Like, write some things down. And then if you hear everyone's complaining about this thing, like, we're using an image that sucks. All right, let's not. Let's fix that. Let's take that as a lesson learned. Anyone heard of a risk register? Anyone heard of a configuration management? Things that you're going to attack in order based off of, how they impact the organization. What about your organization? How do you know what is affecting your team and making you suck or not be as good as you can be? It doesn't always have to be you suck, but what's making you not be excellent? What's making you waste time? What's making you have the same issues over and over again? Let's write those things down, figure out solutions, and hit them at whatever we want, but let's solve this problem and not have it go from engagement to engagement to engagement, alert to alert to alert. Let's fix these things. What worked? What didn't go well? What did we miss? And I'm not making this up. This isn't just Air Force. Sorry. Anyone heard of Agile? Like the retrospective is not new. Like, who's been in Agile since Agile's been Agile? And you've done retrospectives? Like, are you doing retrospectives now? Why'd you stop it? It doesn't take a lot of time. It could be 10 minutes. Let's sit down. Or if you're the lead, if you're an engagement manager, you hear all these things while it's happening, write them down then. And then be an instructor pilot. At the end, hey, you guys are complaining about this, 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 and this. What are your thoughts? Excellent. Let's write those down. Let's make an improvement plan. Let's make a register for lessons learned. And then let's start doing these things when we have bandwidth. And if you're too busy, figure it out. Do you want to be excellent, or do you want to keep doing what you're doing? It's up to you to decide whether you're too busy. If you don't have the time, figure out how to make the time. And if you're a lone wolf, find other people. Find mentors. Find people that you can bounce ideas off of. We're out here. You're in a community. You're here with the community. Make some friends that, you know what? Hey, I'm trying to do this thing. What do you think about it? I'm the only pen tester in my company. Like, what are you guys doing? Like, if you don't have it locally, find it. We're here. You know how to find us. Discord. We're there. All right. Anyone got any questions that I can answer? Do I apply these ideas to what I'm doing? To the talks I give? Yes. Not everything hits. Not everything's perfect. I used to teach the same thing like 8 to 12 times a year, 5 days, 8 hours a day when I was at the special operations school. And we iterated. I worked with a bunch of pilots. We were teaching, but yeah, we'd sit down afterwards and be like, Josh, stop saying that. Fix it. That's like, oh, right. Okay. My debrief plan for this, it's first we're going to have a bunch of beers. And then Monday, I'm going to make an appointment with Jerry. And I'm probably going to, well, I'm going to elicit feedback. If you got feedback for me, find me here or find me online. Most of us are connected on LinkedIn because I'm kind of a stalker and I connect with everyone. If we're not connected, please connect with me. Let me know your thoughts. And if you think, hey, I'd like to get some time with you, please do. I would love the feedback. How do you get to a certain level of granularity? Like, how do you make something, avoid making something so brittle that it changes every single time? Start big picture. We're going to enumerate. We're going to identify. We're going to exploit. Okay, how do we enumerate? Well, we're going to use Nmap. We run the same scans every time. What scans do we run? Let's start there. Okay, what changes from time to time? Okay, let's not make that like a standard thing. Let's have that, like, let's write down what we did this time, why. And then next time you get there, you're like, okay, I'm not using that. What am I using this time? Write that down. Next time, write it down. You're typing the command anyways, Control-C, Control-V. Put it over here, come back to it. If you're typing a command, there's no reason you shouldn't be saving that command. Actually, if you're here and you're typing commands, why? Why don't you have a thing where you just Control-C, Control-V? And why haven't you scripted that all out so that it just runs? Come on. You know what I'm talking about. So start somewhere, write it down. If it changes, excellent, write that down. Come back to it. Iterate. Continual improvement, continual development. It's what you would do for software. It's what you do for an organization. It's what the CEOs are doing. It's what the CFO is doing. Why aren't we doing it? All right. Anything else? One more. How do you elicit real feedback? If you ask someone for feedback and you quibble or you don't change, their likelihood to give you feedback again is going to be real low. If someone gives you feedback, you thank them, you apply it, you share, hey, I worked on this thing that you shared with me. This is how I'm going to improve it. They go, excellent. Let me know how that goes. Let's see how that goes. And then they will give you better feedback as you progress. If you're in a community or organization that's not doing that yet, you can start building it. Give other people helpful feedback. And it doesn't have to be hurtful. It doesn't have to be painful. How to Win Friends and Influence People is the greatest hacker book there is. It's the greatest business book there is. Your ability to have communication and to get an idea across to someone where they want to hear it, where they want your feedback, You got to be the person that wants their feedback. If you're not acting, if you're quibbling, you're not going to hear it. You're not going to hear it. All right. I think that's time. Give you some more time to take a break before the next call or next speak. Josh Mason, have a good day.